Hey, what's up? Welcome to episode 38 of Aspie with Attitude. This is another autistic YouTube creator. However, so please subscribe, please like my videos, always leave a comment below, and don't forget the notification to keep up to date with Aspie with Attitude. Well, before I begin my video, I'd like to put my fidget spinner down for a moment, and there's a part in the book I'd like to read from Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome by Brenda Boyd, which I actually did a book review on that back in episode 34. And what I'm going to read about is Vincent Van Gogh, or Vincent Van Gogh, so I'll pronounce it as Gough. So, Vincent Van Gogh felt like an outsider all his life and found it hard to get on with other people. He often behaved in socially inappropriate ways and quarreled a lot with other people. He was seen as an eccentric and a recluse, but took solace from his paintings, which he was very obsessive about. And speaking of which though, could this be true that Van Gogh was really on the autism spectrum? Well, let's just go back from the 1850s to the 1900s in Western European society. Back then, it was a lot different. It's alien to us, but not all that alien. Life was just a lot more different. And if we were in Western Europe, say like in year 1875, we would just realise there was no fossil-fueled vehicles, no one had smartphones. If you tried using one back then, you'll receive no signal or any Wi-Fi whatsoever. And there were no fast trains like the ones that connects all of Europe in 2019. And no one had any imagination that there would be a World War I or World War II. However, though, painting pictures in Western Europe back in 1875 would have been a substitute for Instagrams. There was one person I'd like to talk about from this era is Vincent Van Gogh. Well, he was a very interesting person of his times. Autism diagnosis never existed back then, and why is it suggested that Van Gogh was autistic since he died in 1890? Well, it appears that a person who was dead for 80-90 years before autism awareness could actually be diagnosed with autism. Maybe the reason for Van Gogh as of today, it was all in his paintings he did back in his living years since he was born in 1853 and when he died in 1890. Most of his paintings had very repetitive brushwork, but unique in the modern art world. And his works had been described as post-impressionist by most modern art critics. And Van Gogh's style seemed strange and bizarre from his times. And according to written evidence, he was totally obsessed with his artwork and his masterpieces he did back then. Often, he used to stress about it according to all his written records. It was a psychologist, Albert Lubin, who wrote the documents about Van Gogh's behaviour from 1888 to 1890. Maybe these documents would have been overlooked by Hans Asperger's decades later after when Vincent Van Gogh died. And Vincent Van Gogh also wrote letters to his brother Theodore as furthermore evidence about his behaviour. Yes, and then Van Gogh's mood disorder was all documented as well. And all his life he had no social cues and he was an outsider, often socially isolated, as I explained back in episode 8 of Aspie with Attitude. Alright, what was written in these records? It was true that Van Gogh did experience behavioural problems and he had a very unhappy childhood. He was regarded to be strange and unconventional back in his times. On his records, he suffered from epilepsy and bipolar disorder. Also, written evidence that he had borderline personality disorder. Even Van Gogh was an alcoholic and he used to always drink a lot. It was from the 23rd of December 1888 when his life just went on a downward spiral, and he's been in and out of asylums. Well, speaking of which though, all his meltdowns were documented, there was one time the only best friend he had in the last 18 months of his life was Paul Guggen, depending how I can pronounce his name. Well, there was a massive falling out, a bit of an argument, and then Paul decided to no longer be Vincent's roommate, which actually resulted that Vincent van Gogh had a meltdown, allowing him to cut off his ear. And it was on 29th of July 1890 he committed suicide by shooting himself in the head. The outcome was, it was a stress and all his hyper-focus he had in his artwork and his masterpieces. He suffered a lot of sleeping disorder, and also plus he was an alcoholic. It's just now modern medicine would suggest that Van Gogh was actually autistic, and there had been written evidence of Van Gogh's quirky behaviour, maybe easily compared to the autistic traits that we know of today. It's all been suggested by international medical experts that Van Gogh was an Aspie. What I'd like to do now is, I'd like to leave it up to you to decide. Leave the comments down below if you think that Van Gogh was really autistic, because there was no autism diagnosis back in his living years, of course. And that's all you really need to know about Van Gogh's strange behaviour he had back in those days. And it's all in written evidence. And nowadays you can just always look at his artwork just to understand his Aspie superpowers that Van Gogh had, allowing his artwork to nowadays sell for tens of millions of dollars. And I just didn't want to talk about painting. I was just more interested in asking the question is, was Van Gogh really autistic? And before I sign off though, I'd like to say peace, and I hope you enjoyed this episode, and see you next one.